Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the 180 Drums podcast. My name is Mark Schroer, and we have a very cool guest on the podcast this week. We have Jeremy Berman. Jeremy is the co-founder of Q Drums, which is becoming massively well-known in the drumming community for making incredible sounding drums. He's also the drum tech for artists like Muse, Katy Perry, 9 Inch Nails, etc. On the podcast today, Jeremy is going to tell us all about drum construction, depths, materials, skins. He's also going to go into detail about drum tuning. If you're anything like me and most other drummers out there that have a hard time with tuning, then this podcast is for you. Guys, please welcome Jeremy Berman and Jake Nicole.
Hey guys, welcome to the 180 Drums podcast. I have Jeremy with me today, and Jeremy is one of the co-founders and the head creator of Q Drums. So Jeremy, it is so great to have you on, man. Where are you calling in from right now?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm actually in Paris, France at the moment.
Wow, dude, nice. So guys, if the connection's a little bit jumpy, that's just because this is only, what would this be, a 5,000 mile phone call, if not far more?
Yeah.
Nice. So,
exactly.
So man, give us a little bit of a brief on, expand on the intro a little bit and your involvement with Q and, where that kind of came out of and, where you guys looked ahead moving forward.
Q Drum started about 5 years ago in 2010. I've been building custom drums for about a long time. I started in 1998 with kind of drum percussion. And shortly after 2009, I wasn't really doing much with them anymore. And, I started touring more often. I started touring in 2004 as a drum tech. And in 2010, I started doing it a lot more. And I was working for Katy Perry at the time. The drummer is Adam Marcello. And he was endorsed by another company, and they had built him a light-up drum kit. And it needed a lot of work to make it tour ready. And when it came down to it, they needed a second drum kit. And Adam said that he's like, I can just order another one from Shine and we'll be fine. And I kind of wasn't feeling that so much because I knew I would be the one setting it up every day. And I just wanted to make sure that all the wiring was tight and it would be easier for me if I had just built it from scratch. So wow. At that time, without any ties to any drum company myself, I told them, let's just order the parts. I have a shop. So he said, you should a company and let me be your first endorser. So I kept telling him no.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew what kind of a pain in the ass it would be, but he was very persistent. So I said, fuck it, why not? And in October of 2010, started Q, and he was my very first endorser, and
wow.
still has number one Q Drumco kit, and that was the beginning for us. And it's been quite a wild ride. Obviously we do some stuff that's a little unorthodox with the metal drum kits and stuff like that, and a lot of people were very hesitant about metal being used as a material for toms and bass drums. And I kind of figured Ron Donnett had sort of paved that way with his the stainless steel, his titanium stuff, but people were still kind of leery. But luckily for us, we just kind of persisted and got some good artists on board. And obviously, my partner, Ilan Rubin, when he joined the company, he went out on tour using a copper kit, and that kind of helped us bring him into the mainstream. So far, it's been amazing.
And man, what's some of the best feedback you got on the drums so far to date? Like, what would you say? I mean, obviously, the shell material immediately separates you from the pack. What else do you think, in terms of feedback, has been a big staple for you guys?
Well, people that use them, the biggest compliment we get is how versatile they are. Most people expect metal drum kits to be very brash, almost unusable, similar to like the old Ludwig stainless steels, which I love. I love how awkward they sound, and how bright they are. But the way we construct our drums, they just aren't that. We use wood reinforcement rings, and that really softens the overtones, and it warms up the attack, and makes it a more usable drum. And so for people to think that they're incredibly versatile is exactly what we were going for. And I think that has been, for me at least, the biggest compliment, because what's the point of having a drum set if you're not going to use it?
Absolutely.
If it's a one trick pony, it's gonna end up sitting in the corner of your practice space until, oh hey, maybe this will work on that one verse of that one song, and that's just no reason to spend the money on a custom kit for that kind of use.
Absolutely, man. Okay, so take us back. We're gonna come back and talk more about this. Let's talk about how you got started building drums. Where did that begin for you? And were you a gigging drummer prior to that?
I actually I was not a gigging drummer prior to that, but I did go to school for drumming. I went to MI in LA, or Musicians Institute, and I was working, actually, believe it or not, I was actually working at Guitar Center in Fountain Valley, and
cool.
I was one of the guys that didn't really know anything about drums and thought that I knew it all, and sold tons of shitty products to people because it made me the most money, and realized very fast that it was a soulless effort, and I just hated it. And I was coming back from MI, and I was late for work, and it was quite the drive, and I had flipped. I basically got in a car accident and flipped my
man
overpass. Yeah. So I kind of had one of those life flash before my eyes moments, and realized, like, okay, this sucks. And at that time, one of my customers at Guitar Center was a gentleman named John Machado, who was vice president of Orange County Drum Percussion. And he would come in to pick up drum heads every once in a while, and I would bug him, jokingly, hey, why don't you guys hire me? I have previous working. You'll never make any money working for us. And after that accident, the money didn't matter to me at all. And so he came in, and I prompted him again and said, hey, what about a job? He's like, look, man, you're really not going to make any money. And I said, I really don't give a shit. The last place I want to be is in this store selling drumsticks. I want to be doing something with my hands. So, he brought me in, and that was kind of the beginning. And I literally sanded drum shells for 6 months to a year straight before I really did anything else. And, he saw that I had a knack for building drums, and he kind of let me have free reign, and I would take scraps and put shells together and make hybrid shells and do all this other shit. And he was, kind of helped mold me into that direction. And, I learned a lot from being there. I learned a lot about what not to do, how not to build the drum, and just by my experimentation, and kind of settled upon how I build now, and it was an amazing experience for me. So.
And how old were you at that time?
I was probably, I started there when I was 19.
Wow. Okay, cool, man.
Yeah, man.
So that totally changed the direction of your life. Like, prior to that, what would have been your biggest dream prior to that?
Playing drums, being a rock star, Yeah,
of course.
Every musician's dream.
Cool.
But I didn't want to put the time in for practice to I actually enjoyed building this stuff more than I did playing it. And it shows, I still get to play every once in a while, and I do love playing more than anything else. But being able to be in my shop and build drums for other people to actually enjoy is probably the best thing I could have ever done.
Wow. Well, let me give everyone listening a little bit more information on how you and I met, because I met Jeremy at NAMM, which is, roughly 4 weeks ago or so.
Yeah.
And and that was the first time we had met, but I had heard so much about Q. I had seen a lot of whether it was Adam or Ilan, I had seen it bouncing around quite a bit. And the thing, first of all, guys, if you haven't heard Q drums, you have to find a way. A YouTube video is not going to do it justice, and Jeremy's going to laugh because I ended up bringing as many people as I could by the booth because I was just floored. I mean, this is a little bit of a selfish interview because I think what's exciting is there's innovation at the heart of this, and it's working. It actually sounds good. It's not a gimmick. So for one. Yeah, absolutely. And for one, the real reason I'm saying all this is to say that the first thing I noticed about Jeremy is when I sat down and he wanted to let me demo all the snares, there was this like intense curiosity in his eyes after I hit each drum. It was like, what do you, like I could tell that meant the world to you to have feedback. Like, is this working? What do you like about it? How does it sound to you? And there's a whole series of snares that Q has, and we're going to get into that right now too. But just to comment on the fact that your passion was absolutely in building the drums, I could see that it was like, man, you were so excited to see someone hit your drum and have a reaction. So
absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, that's the only way we can progress is getting feedback by people that play and people that mix the drums, and that's the heart and soul of what we do and why we do it. So if we're not utilizing the people playing them and mixing them, then there's no point in us doing what we do.
Amazing. So yeah, guys, as you know, like I said, you have to check that out. We've had very few products on the 180 podcast so far, and I think we've started off with a lot of our favorites. So we're super happy to have you here, man. Why don't you tell us about the snare series, the Gentleman's? Tell us all about these.
Well, the Gentleman's series was something that we had been cooking up for a little while. It's probably been about 3 years in the making. Most of us, we've had a chance to utilize some sort of Black Beauty snare drum, whether it was imported knockoff of the original or the original, and you can actually tell a difference between an original, 60s, 70s era Black Beauty and a knockoff. And the reason why is because the Black Beauty is a spun shell. Because it doesn't have a seam, it just resonates differently than when that is soldered together. And I've always wanted to have my own version of that because there were things about that shell that I thought could be better. They sound incredible, but there's always, for the way my mind works, there's always something that I want to change.
Cool.
For better or for
elaborate?
worse.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing for me was the snare bed. I wasn't really a huge fan of just the very soft, gradual slope on the bottom edge of the snare drum to create a snare bed. I wanted a proper snare bed, and the way we've been doing our snare beds on all of our other snare shells, whether it be metal or like our plate series or our wood drums, is we hand file it, and it's a specific width and it has a specific depth, and the way it's just cut and flattened, it allows the drum to just be very sensitive and very responsive to all your notes, no matter what your tuning is. And I find that sometimes the typical snare bed is just kind of like a curve in the shell, and not really catering to any sort of logic.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to change that. I'm a huge fan of 7-inch deep snare drums. It's sort of like a magic number for me, but it's always between the 7x14 and a 16x24 bass drum. Those are the two magic drums for me. So I wanted a 7x14.
What were the drums? Tell me about the drums that birthed that for you. Like, what was the first drum you heard that was a 7x14 and you went, that's it? Had you built it and that was your experience?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. it was just comfortable, and I felt like the range on it was so much greater than a 6 or a 5 or a 5.5. And now, don't get me wrong, I have plenty of 5s and 5.5s in my arsenal of snare drums that I use for studio stuff, and I love those. But it's always the 7x14 that wins for the bulk of whatever it's being utilized for. So I've always kind of stuck to that. And sorry about that. That's our radio.
Give me a detail. Where are you right now? You're in Paris, but where are you at the venue right now?
I am in Paris. I'm at the venue. I'm currently on tour with the band Muse, and we're about to do I believe 6 nights here in Paris at some arena. I think it's the I actually don't know, the Accor Hotel, the Acer Hotel Arena.
Okay.
Yeah, should be fun.
Dude, very cool. Well, we're going to get in a minute. I definitely want to get to some of the artists you've worked with, because there's a whole other side to your career, which is teching. So we're going to touch on that shortly. But I'm fascinated by it, even this conversation of depths and the magic that you find happens. Like, just quickly, what changes from going between a 6.5 to a 7, and then from a 7 to an 8? Like, is there a tangible? What is it that you're hearing in depth?
Between a 6.5 and a 7, probably not much. It's probably inaudible, to be honest. For some reason in my mind, just being the way I guess it's the way I tune. 7s always sit exactly where I want. Where I typically have to fight a 6.5. 8s I love. 8s are amazing. But it also really depends on what the lug count is, what the material is. And, we do a lot of 8x14 in our plate series, which is, the 3mm thick shells, and we do them in brass, copper, and aluminum. And we always make our brass and our copper 8 lug, where our aluminums are 10. A standard 10, and we found that it just works better for our drums. And it's funny because you look at most every other company, especially Ludwig, in the sense that like their acrylites, their aluminum shells, they're 8 lug, and their brass is 10 lug. So we kind of went opposite, because we wanted our brass drums and our copper drums to have a little more body. We wanted you to be able to down tune them without losing tension as easy. The thing about the 10 lugs is that tension's dispersed around each lug a little lighter. So you start down tuning it, and all of a sudden you're beating the shit out of your drum, and now there goes the tension rod.
Right.
Keeping it an 8 lug, you're less likely to have that happen, and you also you're stuck within a range. You can never crank it up so much that it sounds like a little popcorn snare, and that's one thing we don't want. We don't want people getting our snare drums and cranking the life out of them and it not sounding the way it should.
Yeah.
So you can still tension the 8 lug up, but tonally it'll never be as high pitched as a 10 lug.
Very interesting, man. So you almost place an intentional limitation on the drum to make sure that it's
Absolutely.
Wow. Very cool.
To make sure that it'll always sit where it should sit. And now, don't get me wrong, you can tension it up pretty high and get a really nice crack out of it, but it won't be anything like a 10 lug.
Yes. But that's cool, man, because I think, that's the next question that I want to get into with you, is definitely tuning. But one of the things that I noticed was absolute sensitivity out of the drum. I think that I tried mostly 6.5s, a 7, and then maybe one 5.5 or a 5. And
Yep.
Man, just the sensitivity of every drum was phenomenal. So it's funny to hear you talk so much about. That's what's cool is, you're making lots of drums that aren't these specs you're talking about, but you're definitely creating drums to maximize their output, and even reducing some of the input by having the 10th lug. That's really cool, man. So
Right.
You said 7x14 for the snare, 16x24 for the kick. What are your personal, your favorite sounding tom sizes?
9x13, 16, and 16 to 18
Very cool, man.
are my favorites.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you were probably happy when
it's funny because most of our kits be in that configuration, because that's what we 9 times out of 10, our endorsers will play those sizes, and then that's what prompts our clients to want to go with those sizes as well, because they actually hear those sizes and say, oh, well, that works really well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I actually wanted to ask is if there's, people looking to hear Q Drum Co, are there videos that you personally feel like, oh, that video did a pretty good job of capturing the sound of the kit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We've done a few ourselves with the lawn playing, and we use very minimal miking. I think we mic the bass drum and we mic the snare drum, but for the most part, it's only room mics. We don't do any close miking on toms because we want you to be able to hear the room. That's
Wow,
what
cool.
the drum kit sounds like. Because if you close mic something, you can obviously tweak the shit out of it and make it sound however you want. But we wanted the purest sound that you could get. So room mics for us were where it was at. We have a YouTube channel that you can check some of those out on. And what's amazing nowadays are the dealers that we have, like Chicago Music Exchange and Lone Star and Sound Attack in the UK. Those guys are paving the way for obviously selling drums by utilizing YouTube and making videos of the drum kits. And they have been kind of miking the drums the same way we do, and it really comes through in their videos, and you can tell how good they sound at, again, with just the room mics. And I think it's a testament to the drums and obviously the player playing them. But that's a great way for anybody to hear our drums if they're at all interested.
Yeah, I will include links to all that stuff in the show notes, so you guys can head to 180drums.com/Jeremy Q, and all that stuff will be there for sure. So man, that's great. Now give us some tips on tuning for every question that I'm gonna get asked of drummers being like, how do I tune my drums? I mean, you dude are the expert, so tell me, is there any tactic that you use?
Yeah, it is. It's very unorthodox and it's very weird. And every time somebody watches me tune, they're like, "What the fuck did you just do, man?" I tune a little bit higher than what most people are used to, and the reason why is because I feel that drums pigeonholed as this low end instrument when it's really not. It's kind of a mid-range instrument. You have the bass guitar for the low end, and I always start with the bottom head. The bottom head I bring up just a hair more than the top head, and because I tune higher, like I was saying earlier, it's more because I feel like the drums should sit in somewhere in the middle, where you let the bass be the low end, drums be mid to mid low, and then everything else above that. And contrary to popular belief, where a lot of people think drums need to be the low end instrument, it just isn't. It's not supposed to be. And by bringing them up in the mix, they actually sound better. They sound like an instrument instead of just hitting a floppy piece of plastic.
Yeah. Which has unfortunately become such a trend. We've seen this weird trend happen where it's become like really dead, big floppy drums and then massive cymbals, and those two things fight each other so much.
It works for some things, and I will never be one to knock using drums, because I think that the T-Towel, we have obviously heard on many records from back in the day, it sounds phenomenal. For me, obviously, a combination with whatever kind of shell material you're using, I think that's where your most sound comes from. That's what you're trying to accomplish is by utilizing those particular products. And I'm a huge advocate of Remo drum heads, and I've been using their drum heads since the beginning of time, and I know how they sound, I know how they work, and all of our drums come stock with CS dots, and CS dots. It's kind of like some people call it the cheater heads because they are controlled. I've always kind of figured pinstripes to be more the cheater heads, but I would prefer to use CS dots than having like a clear ambassador or a coated emperor or something like that, and put moon gel on it. You know,
Right.
I think that what you get out of a CS dot is that you get the attack because of the dot. You get a little more focused sound, and it decays a little bit faster than your standard 2-ply head or 6-ply head. And so it's perfectly EQ and easy to tune. So definitely check those out. I mean, that's my 2 cents.
Very cool, dude. That's amazing. That's great, man. Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by the constant back and forth with Remo and Evans. I'm not allowed to have an opinion just yet, but I hear what you're saying, man. Definitely, I've played the CS dots. What I think is so cool, and what I think makes it less of a cheater head, is the fact that it is a single ply. That gives you a lot of room to work with.
Yep.
You know.
Yep, they're a little bit brighter, kind of like an ambassador, but they don't resonate as or sustain as much, I should say. And you know, I on all the gigs that I do as a drum tech, no matter what festival or in an arena or in a club, you'll never find a piece of moon gel on any of my toms.
That's super interesting, man. So sorry to cut you off there. I know that we're cutting out a little bit back and forth, but no dampening on your drums, essentially. And is the kick wide open as well? Or because when I played the kick at NAMM, that was the best sounding wide open bass drum I've heard. So what about in general with bass drums? Are you?
You know, that's a tough one because at NAMM I don't put anything in the bass drum because I want people to hear it as it is. But how I port the front head and how I tune it obviously is a huge factor in how that bass drum sounded at the show. I'm a huge fan of a center hole, typically larger than what you would normally put on a bass drum. I usually go 7 inches for anything 22 and above, and if I'm tuning up a 26, it's typically like an 8 or 9 inch hole. Because it's centered, it just focuses the sound of the bass drum. I use a single ply resonant head like an ambassador, and then I use the Power Stroke 3 for the batter, and I typically go with a coated because I like the warmth of the coated batter on a bass drum more than I like the plasticky attack of a clear.
Huh, man, this is education hour right here, guys. I hope you're taking notes because I sure am. Amazing. Okay, very cool, Dad. Like now, walk us through what are some records that you find you're either constantly going back to or currently listening to. We'll do this in 2 parts. We'll do records that you're currently listening to, and then records that you feel have great drum sounds, because those can sometimes be 2 different things.
Right. Absolutely. You know, I listen to such a variety of music. I always, you know, I always go back to my classic, some of my favorites that are probably played every day are Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. I love the drum sounds on that. But I'll also, you know, I've been listening to a lot of newer R&B stuff like Anderson .Paak, and he's kind of got a really smooth vibe similar to like a D'Angelo. Basically, if you take D'Angelo and Kendrick Lamar and you put them together, you got this dude, and the drums sound awesome. Obviously, some old D'Angelo with Questlove playing drums. I mean, that's you can't beat that shit. So, like I said, I listen to everything, you know.
Yeah.
And I do gravitate towards stuff that's more drummer friendly, just because it's ingrained in us, I guess.
Yes.
So yeah, anything with Questlove playing drums is probably going to be a phenomenal record.
Did Quest stop by the booth at NAMM?
No, unfortunately.
Oh, shoot.
I did get to meet him on the Jimmy Fallon show a couple years ago, and he was such a nice guy. And obviously getting to watch him play in that setting was pretty fantastic. So
Absolutely. Now, have you any contact with Quest? Have you ever tried to send him anything? And
No, no, honestly, that's one thing that we've kind of tried to not do
yes,
is poach, so to speak, or go after artists. I like it. I like it to be a more organic thing where we become friends. We talk. If somebody wants to check something out, we let them check them out, and if they dig them and they want to come on board, then we work something out. Versus, hey man, you don't know me, you should play my drums, kind of vibe, or
absolutely.
here's some free drums, enjoy. Because I just don't think that people understand it at that point. I don't think that they give a shit, and that's the one thing that we want, is for them to give a shit. And how can you? I don't know how. I just can't. I just don't feel comfortable doing that to people. So
That's great, man. I think that at the heart of what you guys are doing is it's obviously grassroots, but it's you're trying to do something really honest, and I think that comes through with everything about the booth, the guys that are hanging out at it. Is it's like a crew, it's a family, right?
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and that is going to translate more than anything else because someone is not just buying a Q Drumco kit; they're buying into not like they're buying into the family, but they're becoming a part of the family. It's a cool vibe, man. I'm excited about that for sure.
Well, thank you very much. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun, and because I've been doing it for so long, a lot of dudes are my friends, just through touring and building over at OC, and obviously with Q, and I have a lot of friends that don't play my drums, and I'm totally fine with that as well. So
Yeah, of course, man. Okay, cool. Now walk us through some of the artists that are currently playing Q that people might know. Not to put you on the spot because all of this is just a conversation. And
Right.
to anyone who gets left out, it's my fault because I didn't prep Jeremy for any of these questions. So
Well, as far as our artists go, we have obviously my partner Ilan joined us because I've been building his drums since he was 11,
wow.
and he wanted to be a part of the company more than just an artist on the roster. Having him play our drums has been huge for us. Currently, Dom Howard from Muse is playing our drums. Adam Marcello from Katy Perry. Jamie Miller, who played with Snot and played with Trail of Dead and is now currently the drummer for Bad Religion, which is huge. Hayden Scott, who's an independent, but he's been playing with a lot of people, AWOL Nation, New Regime, Jimmy.
What's cool too, to cut you off and not be a jerk, is that Chris Reeves going to be on today. He's one of your boys.
Oh, excellent!
Yeah,
yes,
he's actually on right after you. So
oh, beautiful. Well, tell him I said hi. We were going to talk yesterday, but he called me. It was like 4 a.m. here, and I texted him. I'm like, "Hey, dude, I'm in Paris right now, and I'm trying to go to sleep. It's not really working so well, but."
Now's not a good time, Chris. Now's not a good time.
Totally.
And then with Hornbrook as well, with Chris Hornbrook. So
Chris Hornbrook. Oh, I love Chris Hornbrook. I've known Chris for a long, long time as well. Awesome dude, awesome player. Obviously, it was great when he reached out and wanted to come on board, and it was kind of a no-brainer for us. Yeah, man. You definitely should reach out to Jimmy Vela of The Sword. He's a phenomenal player. He also used to be in a band called Recover. I don't know if you remember them.
Cool, man.
They were amazing. We kind of run the whole gamut, man. We got a lot of electronic dudes like Derek Taylor, who's playing with Banks, and we all love Banks because she's hot and talented, and he's such a different drummer. I mean, he's phenomenal. He used to play with an older soul guy named Durando who sadly passed, but listen to some old Durando records and you can get an idea of what Derek's style is, because Derek played with him recently, and just a phenomenal player. And he's a very unique drummer, especially with his setup with Banks, where he's got, 2 snare drums. He plays a pad as his main snare that we built him, SPD-SX, and like a 30-inch auxiliary marching bass drum as a bass drum kind of thing. It's really strange.
Wow.
Yeah, he's awesome. So.
Man, it is so exciting to hear drummers that are innovating. That's something that's getting rarer and rarer because people love to mimic other dudes, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't wait to check that out, man. That's really cool. Who are some of the drummers that excite you as well that, specifically to take the pressure off listing certain names, guys that aren't on your roster that you're like, man, that guy's bad. That's a sick drummer.
Oh, well, I mean, Refused. Come on now.
Come on. Come on.
Yeah, he's been one of my favorite drummers for a long time. I'm a huge nerd for Earl Hudson from Bad Brains,
Cool.
and that's probably my favorite band of all time. And the stuff that he played on was fantastic. And Aaron Spears.
Nice.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Aaron. He's phenomenal. He's also a homie. I love that to death.
Cool, man.
So that's
How did you meet? How did you get in touch with Aaron? What was the contact there?
Interestingly enough, my girlfriend actually toured with Backstreet Boys when he was playing drums for Backstreet Boys, and
Oh, cool.
and we were also kind of. I was working for Nine Inch Nails at the time that he was playing with. I want to say he was doing American Idol, or
Okay.
he was doing something. But we were at Center Staging in Burbank, which was a rehearsal place, and he was rehearsing next door. And somehow we just got to talking, and he found out that my girlfriend was somebody working on his tour at one point, and we just, we became buddies. And he's awesome. He's such a good-hearted and obviously a phenomenal drummer. So
Yes, for sure.
guys like Thomas Pridgeon, he's awesome to watch. He's a really good dude as well. Dave Elich, Gil Sharon, he's been a close friend of mine for probably 16 years or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to build his drums back when he was an OC artist, and obviously he's a DW guy now, but we stay in touch often. Ray Lazier, who's we all know is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
He was actually my private instructor when I was going to MI.
Oh,
He was
cool, man.
He was playing drums for who was he playing for at the time? David Lee Roth.
David Lee Roth, that's right. You know what? I grew up watching those videos of him with that blue, red, and white drum kit that he had, and he was in all those MI videos.
Oh yeah.
That was a huge inspiration, in my younger years growing up, for sure.
So yeah, all those dudes are awesome. I'm probably forgetting a lot of people, and I feel like an asshole doing that. But you
That's
put me on
okay.
the spot.
I put you on the spot, and
grasping at straws.
that's okay, man. I'm gonna link to more stuff for sure. So that's great, man. That's really cool. Awesome, dude. So tell me how you got into teching. How did that happen?
I was working at drums. One of the artists, a drum named Berman, who was playing and he had called. It was like March of 2004, I think, and wanted us to send him some drums to New Orleans because they were going to start recording a new album. And he wanted big drums. He wanted like 28-inch bass drum and some bigger toms. And he asked if anybody knew how to tune and if they would be available for the session. It was like a 2-week session. And my boss at the time, John Machado, he fielded the call. He also knew how much of a fanboy I was of Nine Inch Nails, and said, "Yeah, I got the dude for you," and sent me over there. And they liked what I did on the record, and then hired me to do the tour. And you know, went through like 4 drummers on that tour, and I got to know all of them, and you know, become friends with all of them, and that was sort of the beginning of the end for me, because ever since.
Wow, man, very cool. And what's been one of your maybe favorite moments so far teching, or tell us one of your favorite moments, and then one of the most horrifying moments as a drum tech?
Most horrifying moment is definitely leaving my 2-year-old daughter. That's probably the most painful. Well, the best experience is just the people that I meet. It's so much fun. It's you know, it's definitely a big, a huge family. I mean, enormous. You know,
Yeah.
I love doing festivals. As much as festivals suck to work, there's so many other bands on there, and you're gonna run into a lot of friends that you haven't seen in a long time, and it just makes it special.
Cool, man. That's awesome, dude. Who are some of the people you run into on the road the most?
Depends on who I'm working for at the time.
Yeah, of course.
But typically other backline guys, you know, guitar techs, drum techs, keyboard techs, sound engineers and production managers and that kind of thing. That's typically who I run into. And even a lot of drummers that either I've worked for or I've been friends with for a long time, and I'll see them out there, and it's always you know, a great thing to run into them. So
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Well, listen, I'm going to ask you a couple more really quick questions, and then
Sure.
we will not steal any of your time, because I'm sure you're probably getting ready to tech for the night. So,
yeah.
do you read any books? Give us a couple books that you've read that really inspire you.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. By Robert Pirsig. It's probably one of the most amazing books I've ever read, as far as introspection, being introspective with my life and really trying to figure my shit out.
Very cool.
And then as far as just like fun reads, anything by Murakami, like 1Q84, phenomenal book, fiction writer, of course, and The Prophet, Khalil Gibran, you know, stuff that just kind of makes you feel good.
Cool.
Or The Alchemist, you know.
Yeah,
that kind of shit.
dude, great read. Okay, cool, man. When it comes to how you came up with the name Q Drum Co., where does that come from?
Well, it stems from quality. We just dropped the rest of it.
Cool, man.
Yeah, we kind of cheated on that one. But
How did I not figure that out? That's so brilliant.
I didn't want it to be Quality Drum Company, because it just sounds, you know, I hate to say imported, but it sounds imported. Just a really bad, you know, really bad phonetic, you know.
Yes.
And so we just dropped everything else and called it Q.
Cool. Q. Dig it, man. Okay, so Q Drum Co. is the name for that. Now, what do you think is the biggest mistakes drummers make these days? Like, what's the thing you see a lot of drummers doing where you're like, dude, you're blowing it?
Not learning how to tune their drums.
Cool.
In the story. I mean, that's, you know, you can play your instrument, but you got to make it sound good as well.
Very cool. Not tuning. All right, last question, man. If you could have a message that would go out to everybody in the world, would be translated into their language and arrive on their doorstep in the form of a letter or a note, what would be your sentence or your message to everybody?
Probably love everybody. Just be nice, man. Just be nice. No reason to hate.
Oh, dude, that's great, man. Listen, Jeremy, you've been such an amazing guest. This has been one of the most insightful podcasts, especially when it comes to everything related to sound and, you know, getting good drum tones. I'm going to suggest that everybody takes a minute and heads over to qdrumco.com and checks out, you know, what Jeremy's got going on. And again, you can head to 180drums.com/Jeremy Q and get all the info there as well. But dude, thank you so much for your time, man. Can't wait to hear how the gig goes tonight, dude.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, man. Be good, and hopefully I'll talk to you sooner than later.
Yes, done deal, man. Take care, Jeremy.
Later.
Such a rad guy to have on the podcast. It's so cool to hear him talk about the difference between an 8-lug snare and a 10-lug snare and why you would want one versus the other depending on the sound and the sensitivity. If you're interested in learning a bit more, make sure to go check out the show notes at 180drums.com/Jeremy Q. Also, make sure to go check out the Q Drums website and follow them on Facebook and stuff. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please go rate us on iTunes. If you didn't enjoy us, you can still feel free to go rate us, just so we know. Other than that, that's it for this week. Please stay tuned next week for another podcast from 180 Drums.